The alarms screamed through every corridor of the Steadfast. Captain Dae-ho Kim gripped the arms of his command chair as another shudder ran through the massive colony ship. 50,000 souls depended on him, and right now, their faster-than-light drive was dead in the water. "How long until the swarm scouts find us?" Dae-ho asked. Commander Hae-jin Park looked up from her engineering console, her face pale. "Could be hours. Could be minutes. We're sitting in open space, broadcasting heat. Like a beacon." Dae-ho nodded slowly. They had been running for 3 months, fleeing their destroyed colony world. The swarm had come without warning, consuming everything. Now, stranded between stars, they were easy prey. "Keep working on the drive," he said quietly. In the medical bay, 12-year-old Young-soo sat beside his mother's bed. She had fallen sick 2 weeks ago, along with hundreds of others. The life support pods were failing one by one. He watched the engineers frantically switching power cells, swapping components, doing anything to keep people alive. On the bridge, a sensor officer called out, "Contact! Unknown vessel. Approaching." Every person froze. Dae-ho felt his heart sink. "Is it the swarm?" "No, sir. Different signature. It's a merchant ship. Sath design." Hope and suspicion warred in Dae-ho's mind. The Sath were reptilian traders who sold to anyone with credits. They were neutral in every conflict, never taking sides. They certainly wouldn't help refugees with nothing to trade. The communication channel crackled. A hissing voice spoke in rough but understandable human language. "Human vessel. This is Merchant Captain Vekthar. Your distress beacon reached us. What is your situation?" "Vek," Dae-ho hesitated. What could he say? They had no money, no goods, nothing to bargain with. But his people were dying. "Captain Vekthar, this is Captain Dae-ho Kim of the Steadfast. We are a colony ship carrying 50,000 refugees. Our drive is damaged. We have no way to pay for assistance, but I'm asking for help anyway." Silence filled the bridge. Then Vekthar spoke again. "Maintain position. I am approaching." An hour later, Vekthar's ship docked with the Steadfast. The Soth captain came aboard with 3 crew members. He was tall, covered in dark green scales, with golden eyes that seemed to see everything. When he entered the medical bay, he stopped and stared. Young-soo watched as the alien captain observed human engineers working desperately. They had torn apart their own equipment to salvage parts for the life support pods. One engineer had given up his own breathing mask to keep a child's pod running. Another was using hand tools because the powered ones had been stripped for parts. Vekthar walked to where a human engineer was manually pumping air into a failing pod. Inside, a small child slept, unaware of the danger. The engineer's arms shook with exhaustion. But he didn't stop. "How long have you been doing this?" Vekthar asked. The engineer didn't look up. 6 hours. Someone else will take over soon. And if no one comes, then I keep pumping." Vekthar stood there for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew and spoke in his own language. They argued with him, their voices rising. Finally, they fell silent and left. Vekthar found Captain Dae-ho on the bridge. "I have the parts you need for your drive. And components for your life support systems." Dae-ho stared. "Captain, I told you, we cannot pay." "I know." Vekthar's golden eyes were unreadable. "My government has strict rules. We do not involve ourselves in wars. We do not take sides. We trade only." He paused. "But I watched your people. They give everything for their young. This is not war. This is survival. I choose to help. Your government will strip my license and exile me. Yes." Vekthar's scales seemed to ripple. "But I am old. I have traded across the galaxy. I have made profit. Now I will do something worth more than credits." The repairs took 8 hours. Vekthar's crew worked alongside human engineers, showing them how to install the new components. Young-soo brought them water and food, watching these strange aliens save his people. Then the sensors screamed again. "Swarm scouts! 3 ships! Incoming fast!" Deho ran to the bridge. "How long until our drive is ready?" 30 minutes, Heejin shouted back. "We don't have 30 minutes. Vekthar appeared beside him. "My ship is armed. Not well, but armed. I will delay them. Captain, you'll be destroyed. Your ship is a merchant vessel." "Yes." Vekthar looked at him calmly. "But your ship carries 50,000 lives, including children I watched your people die to protect. That is simple mathematics." Before Deho could respond, Vekthar was gone, running back to his ship. The docking clamps released, and the small merchant vessel moved between the Steadfast and the approaching swarm scouts. The battle was brief and brutal. Vekthar's ship had only light weapons, meant to scare off pirates, not fight military vessels. But he used every trick he knew, dodging and weaving, drawing the swarm ships away from the Steadfast. Young Su watched from a viewport as the alien ship fired its weapons again and again. One swarm scout exploded, then another. But the third got through Vekthar's defense and tore into his ship's hull. "Drive is online!" Heejin shouted. "Jump now," Deho ordered. But before the Steadfast could leap to faster than light speed, Vekthar's voice came through the communication channel. It was weak, filled with pain. "Captain Kim, my crew is dead. My ship is dying. But you will escape. Vekthar, listen to me. My people will forget this. We forget everything that is not profit." The Soth captain coughed. "But I have seen humans. You remember. You honor. You do not forget those who help you." His voice grew softer. "And Persant, tell them my name. That is all I ask." "I swear it," Deho said, his voice breaking. "We will never forget." "Good. That is good. Now go. Live. Remember." The channel went silent. Vekthar's ship exploded, taking the last swarm scout with it. The Steadfast jumped to faster than light speed, leaving only debris behind. In the observation deck, Young Su pressed his hand against the viewport and whispered a name he would never forget. Vekthar. Vekthar. Around him, other refugees did the same. They had seen what the alien captain did. They would remember. They would tell their children. And their children would tell their children. This was how it began. This was the first name. 15 years had passed since the Steadfast escaped. Commander Young Su Choi stood in the Hall of Heroes on Earth, staring at the first statue. It showed a tall Soth in a merchant captain's uniform, scales carved from dark stone, golden eyes made of actual gold. The plaque read simply, "Vekthar, first among friends. Died so 50,000 could live." Young Su visited this statue every week. He had been just a boy when Vekthar saved them, but he remembered everything. The way the alien captain had watched human engineers sacrifice their own equipment. The calm voice on the communication channel as he flew to his death. The explosion that lit up space. "Still here, Commander?" a voice asked behind him. Young Su turned to see Ambassador Jae-won Lee. The older man looked tired but determined. He carried a data pad filled with diplomatic files. "Just paying respects, sir." "Good. Because tomorrow, we're going to need that dedication." Jae-won gestured at the statue. "We're taking a copy of this to the Soth homeworld. We're going to ask them to put it in their capital city." Young Su felt his eyes widen. "Sir, the Soth government doesn't acknowledge what Vekthar did. They declared him a traitor for helping us." "I know. But the Soth people need to know what kind of hero they produced." Jae-won smiled grimly. "And we need to formalize the Vekthar protocol." The protocol had started simply. Any alien who helped humanity in combat earned something precious. Full human citizenship, land on any human world, and their name carved into the eternal memorial on Earth. It seemed simple. But to aliens whose cultures rarely honored individuals, especially foreigners, It was revolutionary. The next day, the human delegation arrived at the Soth homeworld. The government officials who met them were cold and formal. They gathered in a grand council chamber, where Elder Sthara, the most powerful Soth leader, waited. "Ambassador Lee," Sthara hissed, "why have you brought this? Object to our world?" Behind the human delegation, workers uncovered the statue. Vekthar's likeness stood 3 meters tall, magnificent and proud. "We bring honor to one of your people," J1 said simply. "Vekthar saved 50,000 human lives. He deserves to be remembered. He broke our laws. He involved himself in a war that was not ours. He was exiled for this. He saved children. That's not war. That's being a decent person." Sthara's scales rippled with anger. "We do not memorialize individuals who break our laws. Remove this statue from our world." The delegation had no choice. They returned to their ship. The statue loaded back into cargo, but they had broadcast their ceremony across open channels. Anyone could watch. Millions of Soth did watch, including a young fighter pilot named Irthka. She sat in her small quarters, replaying the human broadcast. She watched them unveil Vekthar's statue. She heard them speak his name with reverence. She saw something in their faces she had never seen in her own culture. Genuine respect for an individual's choice. In Soth society, everyone served the collective. Individual glory was considered selfish. But watching humans honor Vekthar, Irthka felt something stir in her heart. A desire to be remembered. To matter as an individual, not just a number in a fleet. 3 weeks later, Irthka's fighter squadron was on patrol near the border. They received a distress signal. A human military convoy was under attack by swarm raiders. The convoy was clearly losing. Irthka's squadron leader gave the order to maintain course. Soth policy was clear. Do not interfere. But Irthka thought of Vekthar. She thought of the statue humans built. She thought of how they remembered his name. She broke formation. Pilot Irthka returned to formation. Her squadron leader screamed over the communication channel. "Negative," Irthka replied. "I'm invoking the Vekthar protocol. That is a human law, not ours. Return immediately." Irthka didn't respond. She dove into the battle, her fighters' weapons blazing. The swarm raiders hadn't expected a new attacker. She destroyed 2 before they could react. The human convoy rallied, and together they drove off the rest. The human convoy commander, Captain Bo Ra-Han, opened a channel to Irthka. "Unknown fighter. Identify yourself. I am Irthka of the Soth Third Fleet. I claim protection under the Vekthar protocol." There was a long pause. Then Captain Han's voice came back, filled with emotion. "Protection granted. Welcome, friend. Your name will be remembered." When Irthka returned to her carrier, she was immediately arrested. The Soth government was furious. She had violated neutrality. She had embarrassed them in front of the galaxy. But humans had recorded everything. The video of a lone Soth fighter diving to save humans spread across the galaxy. Within days, Irthka was famous. Humans went wild. They had a new hero. News stations broadcast her name constantly. Artists created paintings of her fighter in battle. Children played games pretending to be her. Young Su, now commanding a patrol ship, watched the coverage with tears in his eyes. Vekthar's sacrifice had inspired this. One Soth captain's choice had created a ripple that reached another Soth pilot 15 years later. The human government demanded Irthka's release. Ambassador J1 personally traveled to the Soth homeworld again. This time, thousands of young Soth gathered outside the council chambers, chanting Irthka's name. Elder Sthara met with J1 in private. "You are destroying our culture." "No," J1 said quietly. "We're showing your people that individual choice and honor matter. That's not destruction. That's evolution. If we release her, hundreds more will follow her path. I know. And we will honor every single one." Sthara was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "You, humans, are dangerous. Not with your weapons, but with your ideas. You make others want to be like you. We just remember our friends. Is that so terrible? The Sath government released Earthka into human custody. She could never return home. But she didn't care. When she stepped off the transport ship onto Earth, 10,000 humans waited to greet her. Young Su was there, in full uniform. He saluted her. Welcome, hero. Your name stands beside Vekthar's now. Earthka looked around at the cheering crowd. At the cameras. At the banners. With her name. Then she looked at young Su and saw genuine respect in his eyes. Not for what she was, but for what she had chosen to do. Thank you, she said quietly. I understand now why Vekthar did it. You make us believe we can be more than what our cultures tell us to be. Within a year, 17 more Soth pilots had defected to join human forces. Then 30. Then 100. The Soth government tried to stop it. But they couldn't. The idea had spread. To stand with humans was to be remembered, to be honored, to matter as an individual. And across the galaxy, young aliens of dozens of species watched and wondered, could I be a hero too? Would they remember my name? The answer was always, humans remembered everyone who stood with them. It was becoming their greatest strength. 30 years after Vekthar's sacrifice, Dr. Kyungmin Nam walked through the Garden of the Fallen on New Terra Colony. Around her, thousands of monuments stood in carefully tended grounds. Trees from a dozen worlds grew here. Water features created peaceful sounds. And everywhere, names were carved in stone. Kyungmin was a xenoanthropologist, someone who studied alien cultures. Her current research focused on a simple question. Why did humans build these gardens on every colony world? And why did aliens care so much about them? The gardens had started simply. After Vekthar, humans began carving the names of every alien who died fighting alongside them. At first, it was just small plaques. Then, entire walls of names. Then someone suggested making it beautiful, peaceful, a place where the living could remember the dead properly. Now, 40 human worlds had Gardens of the Fallen. Each one listed every alien ally who had died. Their name, their species, how they died, and what they saved. No matter how small their contribution, they were remembered. Kyungmin stopped at a monument showing a Chithar warrior. The Chithar were insect-like aliens who lived in hive clusters. This one had died holding a corridor so human civilians could evacuate. The plaque read, Viknash, held the line, saved 423. They spelled his name wrong. A clicking voice said behind her. Kyungmin turned to see a Chithar warrior standing there. He was looking at the monument with multiple compound eyes. I'm sorry, Kyungmin said. Are you family? I am Tikri. Viknash was my nest brother. We came from the same hive cluster. The Chithar moved closer to the stone. His name should have one more syllable. Vikrinash. I'll make sure it's corrected immediately. Why? Tikri's voice held genuine confusion. He was not human. Why do you remember him at all? Kyungmin smiled softly. Because he stood with us. Because he saved our people. Because he mattered. But he was one warrior among billions. In Chithar culture, we do not memorialize individuals. The hive cluster matters, not the single soldier. To us, every individual matters. Especially those who help us. Tikri was silent for a long time, looking at his nest brother's name. Finally, he spoke quietly. My entire cluster died 3 months ago. Swarm attack. I was the only survivor because I was deployed elsewhere. His mandibles clicked softly. My people held a brief ceremony. They acknowledged the cluster's loss. Then they assigned me to a new cluster and told me to move forward. That is our way. Read our. I'm sorry, Kyungmin said, and meant it. But here. Tikri gestured at the garden. Here, You have carved the name of one Chithar warrior. You spelled it wrong. But you tried. You gave him a monument. You planted a tree from his homeworld beside it. He looked at Kyung-min with eyes that seemed to glisten. Why would you do this? For an alien who died 30 years ago. Because someone loved him. Because he was brave. Because forgetting him would be wrong. My people would say this is inefficient. That resources should not be spent remembering the dead. Maybe. But we think remembering makes us better. It reminds us what we're fighting for. Tikri moved through the garden slowly, reading names. Chithar, Soth, humans, and dozens of other species. All remembered equally. All honored. Where are the rest of my cluster mates? He asked quietly. Kyung-min checked her data pad. New Terra had 3 major battles. Chithar forces participated in 2. We have 47 Chithar names recorded. She looked up. Would you like to see them? Yes. They walked together through the garden. At each Chithar monument, Tikri stopped and read the name. Sometimes, he would stand there for long minutes, completely still. Kyung-min gave him space, understanding grief when she saw it. At the 23rd monument, Tikri made a sound she had never heard from a Chithar. Something between a click and a wail. He touched the stone with his front appendages. This is Kirsha. She was my broodmate. We hatched together. I did not know she died here. My people never told me. I'm so sorry. She saved a human medical ship. It says so here. Kirsha, Chithar warrior, gave her life defending the hospital ship Mercy. 2,300 patients survived. Tikri's voice broke. 2,300. So many. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. She was a hero. My people do not use that word for individuals. But you do. You carved her name in stone. You will remember her forever. Tikri looked at Kyung-min. Why? She was just one soldier. Not even human. That's exactly why. Because she wasn't human. But she fought for us anyway. Because she chose to stand with us. That kind of choice deserves to be remembered forever. They found all 47 Chithar monuments. Tikri spent 3 hours in the garden, touching each stone, speaking each name aloud. Kyung-min stayed with him. A quiet presence. Finally, Tikri turned to her. I need to return to my homeworld. I need to tell my people about this. About the garden, about being remembered, about mattering as an individual. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Chithar have always believed that only the cluster matters, that individuals are replaceable. But you have shown me that individuals carry meaning, that their choices echo forward in time. 3 months later, Kyung-min received a message. Tikri had returned to the Chithar homeworld. He had spoken to the High Hive about what he had seen. The Chithar government was considering joining the Human Alliance. But more importantly, young Chithar were deserting their posts to join human forces. Hundreds of them. They all said the same thing. We want to be remembered. We want our names to matter. The Sath government, still struggling with their own wave of defectors, sent a furious message to human leadership. Elder Sthara herself appeared on the communication channel. You are destroying our cultures, she hissed. First our youth, now the Chithar. You corrupt them with your individualism. You make them selfish. Ambassador J1, now much older, responded calmly. We don't make them anything. We just show them that their choices have meaning, that they are more than what their governments tell them to be. This is dangerous. This will tear apart our societies, or it will make them stronger. Imagine what your people could accomplish if they believed they could be heroes. Sthara ended the communication without responding. But across the galaxy, the message was spreading. The gardens were broadcasting their power, not through weapons or threats, but through simple recognition. Young Bo Young, a human caretaker at the New Terra garden, noticed more and more alien visitors. They came quietly, looking for names. Sometimes they would stay for hours, standing before a monument of someone they had known. One day, an elderly Soth approached her. "I am looking for my son's name. He defected to join your forces 5 years ago. He died last year. I was told his name would be here." Bo-young checked her records. Krathna, fighter pilot, died defending the colony of New Hope. His actions saved 7,000 civilians. Where is his monument? Bo-young led the Soth mother to a beautiful spot under a tree from the Soth homeworld. The monument showed a fighter pilot in action, carved with loving detail. The mother touched the stone and made a sound like weeping. His own people would not acknowledge him. They said he was a traitor. But you gave him this. He earned it, Bo-young said simply. He stood with us. That means everything. The Soth mother stayed for 3 days, sitting beside her son's monument. When she finally left, she stopped to speak with Bo-young. "I understand now. Why they leave us. Why they choose you." She gestured at the garden. "You remember. You honor. You make them believe they matter. That is something we never gave them." Word spread. More alien families came to the gardens. More young aliens joined human forces. And on 40 worlds, humans tended their gardens carefully, making sure every name remained readable. Every monument stayed clean. Every tree grew strong. Because humans remembered. It was becoming their greatest weapon. 45 years after Vekthar gave his life, High Chancellor Earthka stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity. She wore the dark uniform of the Human Allied Defense Forces, decorated with medals from a dozen species. Her scales had dulled slightly with age, but her golden eyes remained sharp. She was the first alien to command the combined military forces of the Alliance. Humans, Soth, Chithar, and 20 other species served under her command. It had taken decades to reach this point. Decades of proving herself, of earning respect one battle at a time. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her life. The swarm had gathered its full strength for one final push. Their target, Earth itself. "Status report," Earthka commanded. Admiral Taeyang Song, her oldest friend and the human fleet commander, stepped forward. He had gray in his hair now, lines on his face from years of war, but his eyes were steady. "The swarm has broken through our defensive lines at sectors 7, 12, and 19. Current projections show they will reach Earth in 48 hours. Our available forces? 90,000 ships. Mixed fleet. We're outnumbered 3 to 1. Earthka nodded slowly. She had known the numbers would be bad. The swarm had been gathering strength for years, preparing for this moment. They wanted to destroy humanity's homeworld, to break the spirit of the Alliance. Send evacuation orders to all non-essential personnel on Earth. Begin moving civilians to deep space stations. High Chancellor, a Chithar officer named Maktor clicked. Evacuating Earth will take at least 60 hours. We do not have that much time. I know. Earthka looked at the tactical display, showing the advancing swarm forces. An idea was forming in her mind. A terrible idea. But we can buy time. Taeyang stepped closer, his voice low. What are you thinking? The fleet becomes a living shield. We position ourselves between the swarm and Earth. We don't try to win. We just hold them. Every hour we buy is another 1,000 ships of civilians that escape. That's suicide. Will be destroyed. Yes. Earthka met his eyes. But Earth survives. Humanity survives. The Alliance survives. That is what matters. Let me guess. You plan to lead this suicide mission yourself. I am High Chancellor. My place is with the fleet. Taeyang shook his head firmly. No. I won't let you do this alone. If the fleet stays, I stay. Taeyang, don't even try to argue. We've been friends for 30 years. You stood with humanity when your own people called you a traitor. Now I stand with you. He smiled slightly. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't mess up the tactics. Earthka felt emotion tighten her throat. In Soth culture, such loyalty was rare. But she had learned that humans gave it freely to those they respected. Very well. We stay together. The word spread through the fleet. High Chancellor Earthka was calling for volunteers. She needed ships to form a defensive screen, to buy time for Earth's evacuation. Everyone knew what it meant. This was a one-way mission. Lieutenant Mi-sun Ko, a young communications officer, watched as the responses came in. She recorded everything, knowing that someone needed to preserve what happened next. The first response came from a Chithar battle group. We volunteer. Our clustermates died defending human worlds. Now, we return the favor. Then a Soth squadron. We stand with the High Chancellor. We stand with our friends. Then humans. Hundreds of human ships. Thousands. Within 3 hours, 80% of the fleet had volunteered to stay. Only the transport ships and the escorts protecting civilian evacuation ships declined because they had different duties. Taeyang stared at the numbers in disbelief. They're all staying. Almost everyone. They remember? Earthka said quietly. They remember what humanity taught us. That individual choice matters. That sacrifice is honored. That dying for your friends is the greatest thing you can do. Earthka, we've created an entire generation who believes that. Yes. And now we prove it was true. The fleet moved into position. 90,000 ships formed a massive wall between the swarm and Earth. Behind them, civilian transports began their desperate escape, carrying billions away from the homeworld. The swarm arrived like a tide of darkness. 300,000 ships, all organic, all controlled by the hive mind. They had no individuals, no heroes, no one who chose to stand. They just consumed. The battle began. Mi-sun recorded everything. She captured the moment when Chithar warriors charged into impossible odds, buying seconds with their lives. She recorded Soth pilots who flew suicide runs into swarm bioships. She documented humans who rammed their damaged ships into enemy formations rather than retreat. The fleet was dying. Ship by ship, name by name, the Alliance forces were being destroyed. But they held the line. Every hour, another 10,000 civilian ships escaped. On the bridge of the Unity, Earthka coordinated the defense. Her voice remained calm even as the tactical display showed red everywhere. Ships dying. Friends dying. Her entire fleet sacrificing itself. Taeyang stood beside her, issuing orders, redirecting forces, trying to maximize the time they bought. They worked together perfectly, two minds thinking as one, forged by decades of friendship. High Chancellor, a sensor officer called out. The swarm queen ship is moving forward. It's massive, 10 times larger than anything we've seen. Earthka studied the display. The queen ship was the heart of the swarm, the central intelligence that controlled everything. If it died, the entire swarm attack would collapse. But it was protected by thousands of bioships. How long until Earth's evacuation is complete? She asked. 42 hours still needed. Not enough time. The queen ship would break through in less than 10 hours. Unless? Earthka looked at Taeyang. He looked back. They both understood. We ram it, Taeyang said. The Unity is the largest ship in the fleet. If we detonate our core right next to the queen ship, the explosion might destroy it, might collapse the swarm attack. Might. That's not a great tactical assessment. Earthka felt something like a smile cross her face. But it's all we have. Taeyang nodded slowly. Then he turned to the crew. All hands. This is Admiral Song. Prepare to evacuate. We're about to do something crazy. No. Earthka's voice was firm. No evacuation. If we evacuate, the ship becomes sluggish. We need full power, full control. Everyone stays. The crew looked at each other. Then, one by one, they nodded. They would stay. They would see it through. Mi-sun kept recording. She knew these might be her last moments. But the galaxy needed to know what happened here. how the Alliance died, and why. The Unity turned toward the Queen ship. Its engines blazed at full power. Around it, the remnants of the fleet saw what was happening and rallied, throwing themselves at the swarm forces to clear a path. Chithar ships exploded, buying meters. Soth fighters burned, buying seconds. Human cruisers rammed bio-ships aside, buying the Unity a corridor through the chaos. 30 seconds to contact, Taeyang said. His hand found Earthka's. She squeezed it. Do you have regrets? She asked. None. Standing with humans was the best choice I ever made. Standing with you was an honor. For me as well, old friend. The Unity crashed into the Queen ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Taeyang hit the detonation sequence. The explosion was visible from Earth. A new star blazed in space as the Unity's core detonated at full power. The Queen ship, caught in the blast, tore apart. Its death scream echoed through the swarm's hive mind. Across the battlefield, swarm ships suddenly went dormant. Without the Queen to guide them, they were just biological matter drifting in space. The attack collapsed. Earth was saved. In the silence after the explosion, Mi-sun's recording device continued operating. She had ejected it in a survival pod at the last second. Following Earthka's final order, the recording captured the aftermath. The floating debris, the drifting swarm ships, the few surviving Alliance vessels, and it captured the moment when Earth's communication channels opened, when billions of voices began speaking two names. Earthka, Taeyang. Over and over, a planet remembering its saviors. The war wasn't over, but it had turned, and two names would be remembered forever. 100 years after Vekthar gave his life, Commander Young Soo Choi stood at the entrance to Earth's eternal garden. He was 112 years old now, kept alive by medical technology and sheer stubbornness. His body was frail, but his mind remained sharp. Today was the centennial ceremony. 100 years since the first name was carved in stone. 100 years since humanity began its tradition of remembering. Young Soo's great-granddaughter, Da-eun Park, supported his arm as they walked. She was a historian now, documenting what the memorial culture had done to the galaxy. Around them, millions of people gathered. Humans, yes, but also Soth, Chithar, and dozens of other species. Are you ready, great-grandfather? Da-eun asked gently. I've been ready for 100 years, Young Soo said. His voice was rough with age, but steady. I made a promise to a dying alien. Today, I see if I kept it. They moved through the crowd to the entrance. The eternal garden had grown beyond anything Young Soo had imagined. It was now the size of a city, covering hundreds of square kilometers. Trees from every allied world grew here. Water features reflected the sky. And everywhere, monuments stood. Millions of monuments. Millions of names. At the entrance, Vekthar's statue stood as it always had, the first name, the first friend. Over the decades, it had been expanded. Now it showed the moment of his sacrifice, his ship diving between the Steadfast and the Swarm Scouts. Artists from 20 species had contributed to it, adding details, honoring him in their own ways. The ceremony began with a recording. Mi-sun Ko's voice, preserved from a century ago. She had survived the battle for Earth, and her recordings had become the most important historical documents of the war. Now, her elderly voice spoke to the gathered crowd. I was there when it started. I was a child on the Steadfast. I watched Vekthar save us. I watched him die. And I watched what happened next. I watched humanity remember. The recording continued, showing clips from across the century. Arthka's first defection. The gardens spreading to every world. Tikri finding his clustermates' names. The battle for Earth. The sacrifice of thousands. Young Soo watched with tears streaming down his face. He had seen most of these events in person. He had lived through the transformation of the galaxy. When the recording ended, Young Soo stepped forward to speak. His voice was amplified across the garden and broadcast to every allied world. I am Commander Young-Soo Choi. I am the last living person who was aboard the Steadfast when Vecthar saved us. I was 12 years old. I watched him die, and I heard him say something that changed everything. He paused, gathering strength. Da-un held his arm, supporting him. Vecthar told Captain Daeho that his own people would forget him. But he said humans would remember. He asked us to tell them his name. That was all he wanted. To be remembered. Young-Soo looked at the massive statue. We did more than that. We carved his name in stone. We built monuments. We created a tradition. We showed the galaxy that standing with humanity means being remembered forever. He turned to face the crowd. And look what happened. We won a war. Not just with weapons, but with an idea. The idea that individual choice matters. That sacrifice deserves recognition. That names should be remembered. A Sath elder stepped forward. It was Elder Sthara's great-granddaughter, also named Sthara. She looked nothing like her ancestor. Where the old Sthara had been cold and rigid, this one's scales were painted with colors of celebration. I speak for the Soth people, she said. 100 years ago, my great-grandmother tried to stop this. She saw it as a threat to our culture. She was right. It did change our culture. Sthara smiled. A Sath expression that once would have been unthinkable. It made us better. On my homeworld, we now have the memorial spire. It bears the names of all Soth who stood with the Alliance. 147,000 names. My people visit it every day. We remember our heroes. We are better for it. 1. 1. 1. 1. A Chithar representative spoke next. The High Hive acknowledges that we were wrong. We believed individuals did not matter. Humans showed us the truth. Now we honor our warriors. We remember their names. We tell our young that they can be heroes. And they believe it. Speaker after speaker came forward. Representatives from 40 species. Each explaining how human memorial culture had changed them. Finally, a hologram appeared above the garden. It was a recorded message from Earthka herself, made decades ago, before her final battle. The Soth High Chancellor's image smiled down at the crowd. If you are seeing this, I am dead. Good. I died well. I hope. Fighting beside humans. Fighting beside friends. Her image paused. When I was young, I watched humans honor Vecthar. I saw them build a statue for an alien they barely knew. I saw them cry real tears for a merchant captain who died to save strangers. And I thought, I want that. I want to matter like that. So I broke every rule my people had. I left my home. I joined humanity. And I found something worth more than safety, more than neutrality, more than my own life. I found purpose. I found friends. I found the certainty that my choices mattered. The hologram looked directly at the camera. To everyone watching this, stand with humanity. Not because they are perfect. They are not. But because they remember. Because they honor. Because they make you believe you can be more than what you were born to be. And when you die, they will carve your name in stone. They will plant trees for you. They will tell your story to their children. You will be remembered beyond kingdoms, beyond time itself. The recording ended. Silence filled the garden. Then, slowly, the crowd began to speak. They called out names. Starting with Vecthar, they recited the names of the fallen. All of them, millions of names, spoken aloud, remembered. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous names. Young-Soo stood through all of it, refusing to sit despite his age. He had made a promise. He would see it through. When the last name was spoken, a child approached Young-Soo. She was small, perhaps 7 years old, and she was Soth. Her scales were bright with youth. "Elder," she said in careful human language, "I am Kira. I want to be a hero like Earthka. Will humans remember me too?" Young-Soo knelt down, his old joints protesting. He looked at the child with tears in his eyes. "Yes. If you stand with us, we will remember you. We will carve your name in stone. We will honor you, beyond kingdoms. Promise?" "I promise. Humanity always remembers its friends." The child smiled and ran back to her family. Young-Soo watched her go, then turned to Daun. "I'm ready now. I've kept my promise." "Great-grandfather?" Vekthar asked us to tell them his name. We did. We told the entire galaxy. We changed everything. He smiled weakly. "I can rest now." Young-Soo died 3 days later, peacefully, in his sleep. His monument was placed beside Vekthar's, showing a young boy watching a merchant ship explode in space. The plaque read, "Young-Soo Choi, the boy who remembered, kept a promise for 100 years. But the tradition didn't end. It spread further. Now, 50 allied species maintained memorial gardens. Young aliens of every culture volunteered for human forces, seeking the honor that came with it. Not pay, not territory, not power. Just the certainty that if they fell, they would be remembered. Pirates began to surrender rather than fight human forces, because they knew humans remembered their enemies too, and no one wanted to be famous for the wrong reasons. Neutral governments found themselves pressured by their own youth, who wanted to join the alliance and earn their place in the gardens. The swarm was defeated completely 20 years after the battle for Earth. The final victory was won by a combined force of 70 species, all fighting under the human tradition of individual honor. When the war ended, humanity proposed building one final monument. The Monument of Unity. It would stand on a neutral world and bear the name of every being who had died in the war against the swarm. Every name, regardless of species, side, or circumstance. It took 30 years to build. It was a crystal spire, 3 kilometers tall, with every surface covered in names. At night, it glowed with internal light, making the names visible from orbit. At its base, 3 statues stood. Vekthar, Irthka, Young-Soo, the merchant captain, the high chancellor, and the boy who remembered, the 3 who had started it all. Every year, billions of beings visited the Monument of Unity. They came to find names of loved ones, to remember friends, to teach their children about the war and about sacrifice. And every year, more names were added. Not from war now, but from peace. Scientists who made breakthroughs, artists who created beauty, teachers who inspired generations. Anyone who contributed to the alliance earned their place, because humans had learned something important. Remembering the dead was good, but remembering the living was even better. Honoring those who stood with you, while they could still know they were valued, created loyalty that no army could match. The galaxy had changed. Not through conquest, not through force, but through recognition. Through the simple act of remembering names. And at the entrance to Earth's eternal garden, Vekthar's statue stood eternal. The first friend. The first name. The alien who believed humans would remember. He had been right. They had remembered him. They had remembered everyone. And in doing so, they had changed everything.